What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Morning for me right now, anyway. On my way to work, and this morning I was, rumbling around my little house, getting ready for work, and, started thinking about stuff, looking around my house, putting things into perspective about how me and my wife live. And we live pretty good. We don't really care about possessions or getting the newest thing. We don't care about that. We're just happy with what we need. And I was thinking about that. Thinking about the difference between my family and their priorities when I was growing up, and my wife's family and their priorities while she was growing up. My wife grew up in a house very reminiscent of the house we have here in Mobile, Alabama. Very reminiscent of it. I would say almost a carbon copy. Maybe that's why she loves it so much. My wife grew up very humble in a tremendously large, loving family with a sister and three brothers. A big family. Very conservative family. Very well-educated family, but a family that was minimalist. Her parents were not very typical of the baby boomer generation. They resembled more like the parents that raised the greatest generation, the World War II generation, my great-grandparents' generation. And I was thinking about this and about how our country's going and how we got so many homeless people, how we got so many people that really just can't afford a home in so many places, like in Stockton, California, where I grew up. And I thought to myself, well, let me look at my family for a minute. My dad's family, not a huge family. A huge family, right? My Granny Mabel had, 7 children? And they all grew up in a little house on Vance Street in Pensacola. Seen the house, it's not that big. Really, kids had to share bedrooms, etc., etc. Kitchen was a modest kitchen. The dining room and the kitchen were same room, right? And, and they grew up and they were happy. And then I look at my great-grandmother, who had a little house on Church Street, and she also had a huge family. Huge family, right? My granddad, my Aunt Netta, my Aunt Jake, my Uncle Ken, my Uncle Don, good-sized family. And the house had a kitchen, a living room, a basement, 3 bedrooms for all those people. Why am I talking about this? Because my grandfather got home from Korea, and my mom's dad got home from Korea, and he started his business, and he did really well. He bought the first track house in the family, the first mini mansion. He had the 2-car garage. Each of his daughters had their own bedroom. He and my grandmother had a big bedroom. They had a kitchen with a little kitchen table, a dining room with a formal dining table, and a huge living room. And then, my granddad's generation, they all started moving out into the tract houses. But one thing I noticed, the generation that started moving into the tract houses, was less happy than the generation that just lived in the modest house that met the family's needs in the shitty part of town, right? Right? If you look up Church Street in Stockton, not a good part of town, but you look at the older parts of most large cities, you see the small houses. You see the houses where the people who built this country lived. They lived modestly. They weren't consumers to the point where they had to be like, hey, look at what I got. No. They're just a bunch of guys that went to work, supported their families. Moms were able to stay home and be moms. The whole family lived on a very modest income, a one-person income, and everybody had what they needed. A lot of people would say, oh, well, that world doesn't exist anymore. It's unfortunate that world doesn't exist anymore. People were a lot happier when people just worried about what they needed and occasionally went and got something that they wanted. Now, you got this baby boomer generation. People like my late mom, my late dad. They lived to consume. My mom had to have the big fancy house. My mom had to have the new vehicle every 3 years. My mom would refurnish her entire house every fucking 2 years. Something to go out of fashion, boom, have to have something in fashion. And I never understood it because my mom was always in hock, always in debt. Credit card bills, whatever bullshit, car payment, all this shit. And it never made her happy. Things never made her happy. And I compare that to my wife's family, who lived modestly like my great-grandparents did. And they all lived so happy. I am tired of the baby boomer consumer generation. A lot of people are like, well, Abam, how can you not like Donald Trump? I love Donald Trump. But I don't want him to be president again. Why? Because he's too fucking old, just like Biden is. And he's a part of that baby boomer generation that was handed the world. And that generation that just fucked everything up. Just like Biden is. Okay? Just like Joe Biden. Just like Nancy Pelosi. Just like Chuck Schumer. Just like Mitch McConnell. Their priorities are fucked up. They have been all their lives. It's about what can you buy, you know, rather than just getting by and being happy. You know, we have all these public squares in our towns, all these parks. You don't see anybody in them. But back in the day, people actually used to meet each other. Has all the cell phones, computers, and video games and all that shit made our world better? I don't think so. I don't think so. There are people in this country that will never be able to afford a home, no matter how hard they try, how hard they work. And then you've got people that are just two people living in a house with 20 bedrooms. I don't understand it. When you look at neighborhoods, if you go to the older neighborhoods, smaller homes, people just with what they need, people that interacted with other people, you know, people were happier back then. It's a fact. I'm real happy because my wife, you know, when we were looking for our home, I was like, you know, I don't want anything, you know, real huge. You know, I just want nice, simple homies. My wife said, that's all I want. That's all I want. I never met anybody that lived in a big McMansion, you know, where you got the one kid with the bunk beds in his bedroom and a bonus room that was really happy. Possessions don't make you happy. The flashy new thing doesn't lead to long-term happiness. It's personal relationships that lead to happiness. It's security that leads to happiness. Women wanted to go out into the workplace, and the women's lib movement, well, you women fucked up. You fucked up. Because women went to work to do all that shit, not necessarily to survive. There are many that had to work to survive, but a lot of women just went out, got that extra job just so they could buy shit. How's that working out? We don't even make the shit we buy in this country anymore. How's that working out? How happy is our country? How well off are you right now with all your politics and what you believe so deeply in? How happy is it making you? Right? How happy are cheap Chinese goods that break? How happy are you living a disposable life where everything you have is disposable and you're going to replace it? How happy are you? You're probably not. Back when we made shit in this country, we made shit to last, we made shit to work. Then planned obsolescence came in, so we'd have to buy new shit or replace shit to keep the consumer machine rolling. And then, well, American companies violated their unwritten contract with the American populace, forsaked the American worker, and started making shit overseas to sell here. Yeah, that's where being non-stop consumers has gotten us. The baby boomer generation, they did a lot with the technology and whatnot, and that's fine. But what did they do to really build this country? Huh? What did they do to really make the world better? Not exactly what you think. The baby boomers are a generation that's always been out for themselves. This is a fact. Always been out for themselves, and they still are. They were handed the world by the greatest generation ever that defeated the purest evil to ever be on the earth. And what did they do? They fucked it off. They fucked it off. They were handed a world where shit was made in America, where people could make a living. And now that they're cycling out, they're holding on to it with their teeth. Look at what the world is today. Consumerism and all that shit. Look at what the baby boomers did. Look at all the music and entertainment they made when they were young. They were singing a different tune when they were young that they're singing now. They were. They are the most hypocritical, asshole, consumer, selfish generation of all time. And Gen X, fuck, we're skeptical. We're skeptical. The baby boomer generation have always been about themselves. Both of my parents, my mom and my dad, they were about what they wanted about themselves, and so many were. And that is why Gen X, we were the first fatherless generation. Mom didn't really want to be a good wife. Dad didn't want the responsibilities. Boom. Cool. Do what you want. That's why most of Gen X raised ourselves, if you think about it. You know, we were the most feral generation, right? And now we're in our 50s, late 40s. looking back on things, and it's like, wow. I look back on it, and I look at the generation that defeated Hitler, and the generation that won World War I, and I look at how they lived, and, you know, I've been in my great-grandparents' house. I knew my great-grandmother. And everybody was happy with what they had. Brand names weren't a big deal. As long as you had a pair of shoes, it didn't matter if there was a swoosh on them or not. What mattered was they have holes or not. Didn't matter what brand, whatever fucking clothes you were wearing. Hell, my great-grandmother, my mom's great-grandparents, they didn't even have a fucking car. You know? They walked everywhere. How we doing now? How you living your life now? Is the new $90, $100 video game making you or your kid happy? Or is it just making you want the next one? You know? Is the big flashy car truly making you happy? Or are you just waiting to trade in for another one? You know? Yeah. A lot to think about. You know? Anyways. I'm just going to leave this one off where it is now. I've already gone longer than I really usually like to. Just some shit to think about. Anyways, I am the A-Bomb. Ask yourself, what makes you happy? Is it what you need or what you want? Boom. How you like my haircut? I'm out.